Now, David Meyler, good evening.
Good evening, Joe.
How you doing? I know you kept one eye at least on events at Turf Moor. There's a very strange kind of long pause in this game. I don't know if you caught it, where Kevin Friend, the referee, had a lot of work to do. Initially, he was deciding whether or not to give Robbie Brady a red card for a foul on Cavani, and then VAR intervened, and suddenly 20 seconds later Luke Shaw had got a smidgen of the ball, barely a smidgen, but then studs up on Goodmanson, and so that became the focus of the VAR team. In the end, Robbie Brady's yellow card was rescinded, never mind becoming a red card, and the foul was given against Luke Shaw, who was then given a yellow. I think I've summed that up. Anyway, that was the gist. What did you make of it? I didn't envy Kevin Friend there.
Yeah, I know. It's just when it comes to like this and you start going back, it's like, I don't even know what the ruling is, to be honest, Joe, of how far they go back. Obviously, there was the case where Luke Shaw, is it a foul? And then obviously they break, and then Robbie brings down someone, and then it goes back. But look, I think Luke's was a yellow card. I don't think it's a red card. But at the same time, it's just one of those with VAR. How far do you go back? When I think it was at the earliest part of the season, if you remember, there was a game with Chelsea, and it showed an offside in the lead-up. But the goal came about 10 passes before, or 10 passes after, sorry. It was like, how far do you actually go back to look at these things? But it's a tough one with these with VAR.
And then did you see Harry Maguire had a goal disallowed, a header. There was maybe a touch of left forearm on the shoulder of opposition player. I thought it looked okay.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a legitimate goal. Obviously, Harry's, what is he, 6'3"? He's not exactly small. When he gets up, he's going to be powerful. And look, if you ever look at, say, goal kicks going down the pitch, centre halves are always jumping, leaning with their arm to get that extra kind of step on the shoulder of the opponent. So I don't really see any problem with it. Can you imagine if the Burnley centre half, whether it be me or Tarkowski, did it to Maguire, he wouldn't probably have too much of an argument. So it does happen all the time. I think the goal should have stood, to be fair.
It's just gone half-time. General thoughts on the game? On United obviously looking to go top, and maybe how's Robbie Brady looking as well?
No, do you know what? Actually, not like my wife is massively into football, but obviously she knows I play with Robbie and I'm friendly with Robbie. She asked how's he getting on. I think Robbie's done really well the past few weeks. He's finally hitting some form. Obviously, Robbie was very unlucky with the injuries he's had, and he probably needed a run of games to get back to certainly the levels we know Robbie can get to. And I certainly think at the moment, with Sean Dyche playing him regularly, we're starting to see that he's had, various assists, in games, and I think he's looked bright. Of course, look, when you're playing against Manchester United, it's always going to be a tough game. There's no doubt in that. The game's kind of been almost a game of chess. Burnley will always be defensively solid, and they're very hard to break down. They're very organised. United at times are probably playing in front of Burnley's back four with the way like Cavani's coming short, then Rashford and Martial are coming in off the wings, and they're almost playing into the hands of the Burnley defenders. If you were a Manchester United fan, you'd want to see probably runs in behind, first-time balls. Look, they've got Bruno, who's one of the best in the world at it. That little flick pass around the corner, try and get in behind the defence, because they need to stretch it, because at the moment it's just all in front of Burnley.
Well, there are a few things I want to talk to you about, but first we'll get the half-time reports. So firstly, from Turf Moor, Peter Smith watching Burnley against Manchester United.
Burnley 0, Manchester United 0. VAR played a major part in the first half. Referee Kevin Friend had lots to ponder, overruling a potential Brady red card and United free kick to go back to an incident that occurred 20 seconds earlier, with United's Shaw ultimately booked. Maguire had a towering header ruled out for supposedly impeding Peters in mid-air. Martial's been lively with 3 attempts on goal, and one had a shot for Burnley blocked by Bailly for a corner. Half-time, Burnley 0, Manchester United 0.
Next to Molyneux then, Alex Winter is there.
It's Wolves 1, Everton 1 at the break. A very early lead for the Toffees. Lovely move involving Rodriguez and Dina, and a lovely first-time finish from Iwobi, but Wolves striking back only 8 minutes later with Aït-Nouri driving to the byline, clipping towards the far post, and there was Neves to slide home with the right foot. Since then, chances on Wolves through Silva, drawing a really good low save out of Pickford, and then late in the half, a chance for Dendoncker at the top of the penalty area, but skewed his shot horribly wide. No trouble for Pickford there, but down the other end, it was Iwobi with his second chance of the game for Everton. Neat 1-2 with Rodriguez. Good chance from probably 10 yards out on the angle from the right-hand side, but it was a weak effort, and Patricio got down to keep it out very comfortably. Good game here, and level. Wolves 1, Everton 1.
So there we are, 1-1 Wolves, Everton, and 0-0 between Burnley and Manchester United. If you're just tuning in, we have David Meyler with us. A few things I want to throw your way. Here's an interesting left field one. I was on the BBC website. Micah Richards had a column, and he was talking about one of his favourite people in the world. He calls him one of the most inspirational people that I've ever met. And he was talking about, and the question is going to be to you, which teammate jumps to your mind? He was talking about ... James Milner. It was effectively a love letter to James Milner, one of the most inspirational people I've ever met. Talked about how invaluable he was as a teammate, as a presence, as a person, how approachable he was, how he would ring the phone if you were in trouble at midnight, just all-round class act. The kind of stuff, I suppose, that statistics will find very, very difficult forevermore to measure. How do you measure something like that? And Milner comes across brilliantly in it. So, thrown it at you, you've had no prep time to think about this, a left field kind of question. If I had to ask you for an inspirational teammate to take Micah Richards' word, would anybody jump to mind?
Two. Seamus Coleman and Jordan Henderson. I wouldn't like to pick between the two of them. I've played with Seamus since I was under 21 with Ireland. Obviously before my injuries, then I got called into the squad, the Irish squad, before my injuries, and then Seamus was in. He was kind of well established into the team before I got called in 2012. But I've just always, even as I sit here now talking to you, I was speaking to Seamus this afternoon, and of course then at Sunderland when I first arrived, Jordan was there. Jordan had a knock, and my registration had gone through, so I couldn't play in a game. We were playing Hartlepool with the reserve team, and I ended up sitting next to him for 90 minutes, got chatting to him, and we've been close friends ever since. Those two, the way, probably the biggest compliment that I could give them, because I have a young daughter, I would like, when she's older, her to bring home a man like one of those two. They're just terrific role models in the way they conduct themselves on the pitch, off the pitch. The way they are as husbands, fathers, everything about them is just top notch. And as even if you speak about Micah there, like I've come across James Milner a few times, a terrific pro. Even there was a small thing, I saw Troy Deeney talking the other day about what's his name, Keir Tierney, and he said everyone said he's like James Milner in his approach and the way he conducts himself. So that just speaks volumes of those people we mentioned there. Phenomenal people. And I think the best way to describe someone is, like as a friend, is when it's going good, they'll be there, but when things aren't going great for you, where are they then? And those are the big moments. And I know Seamus has been there for me, and I know Jordan's been there. So they would be the two that would stand out for me.
Right. I'm not as familiar with Henderson. I mean, of course, I'm pretty familiar with him. But even you think of Coleman, since he burst onto the scene as an Everton player and everything he's done with Ireland, and even, the frustration, I'm sure, of being left out at Euro 2012, I can't, all the way back to then to now, I can't think of him ever putting a foot wrong publicly. You know what I mean? Like, he's grown up under the spotlight, and I don't think he's ever put even a foot wrong once.
But I think that a lot of that comes down to his upbringing, with his mother and father, his two brothers, his wife Rachel. I think they've been going out since they were about 13, 14. Right. Seamus is a year older than me. Rachel's the same age as me, so that will tell you how long they've been together. Right. Just, it's the whole package, like, of the young lad from Donegal, on Killybegs, small village, achieves his dreams, goes to England, becomes a professional footballer, goes on to, play in the Premier League for a number of years, captains his country, and then you've got the childhood sweetheart, just comes on the journey with you, and it's just remarkable, really. But a lot of it will come down to his upbringing and the way his family are.
Do you think clubs, when they're dipping into the transfer market, pay enough heed to the character of a Coleman, a Milner, a Henderson?
I would say certain clubs don't. There's been times, even in my playing days, when I played with Hull, we've signed fellas, no doubting that they were very good footballers. But then you really start to question the characters. Like, the example I'd probably use would be Hatton Ben Arfa, one of the most naturally gifted players I ever played with. But he would turn up late on a Monday morning, would come out with his laces untied. He wouldn't, if we were doing, say, a short warm-up of some quick feet or whatever, Hatton would walk through it. He'd toss training off. it was just kind of one of those. That was his mentality. That was his way.
Did he deliver on the pitch?
Not enough. We certainly didn't get the performances he put in for Newcastle. That was the problem. But then I know it's probably not the best example to use at this moment in time, but I know Chris Wilder is very big on it with Sheffield United. There's no doubting that the players they go after are good players, but it's more a case for him, right? Who does this fella knock about with? What's his family like? What's his upbringing like? It's kind of, if you look at his squad, they all seem like top lads. It's kind of a changing room that you'd want to be in it. And I actually, before the game tonight, I said if they win, I reckon they'll stay up, That's a big statement, even as I was waiting for you there when you were doing the roundup there, like to say like that they're still
gone
a good 9 points off with Brighton, with a game in hand. I don't know what it is. Me and my dad laugh and joke, but I back the man, and I just have a feeling Chris Wilder will somehow rejuvenate them now. Obviously, they had to win the FA Cup, now they've won tonight. I can just see them getting a bit of momentum and getting themselves out of it.
Yeah. A Ben Arfa type, not to make it necessarily about him. So that attitude to punctuality and going through the warm-up and the details, during the week.
Yeah.
Is that okay, or even, even better than okay, if he's really delivering on the pitch on a Saturday, or is that always just a toxic thing?
If you're delivering, you'll get the benefit of the doubt the majority of the time.
But I suspect you still don't really like it.
Yeah, I don't. But I look at, in 2015-16 season, we had a striker, Uruguayan, Abel Hernandez, and Abel would be late some days. I used to be in control of the fines. I used to collect all the money I fine people, and it would be kind of basically the money went towards, like say, a Christmas party or a meal for the lads or whatever. There was just kind of always something. If we were doing an activity or something, it was kind of always the fine money was the money used. But Steve Bruce had a big thing about hats and earrings. But Abel, he knew full well that you weren't allowed to wear earrings, but he constantly wore them. And it was like a £50 fine every time. But then Abel was like, okay, if I score on the weekend and I score the winning goal, you not fine me and all this. I'd be like, oh, and then he'd go to the manager and the manager would say, yeah, fine. Abel ended up with 22, 23 goals that season. We got promoted. And it was just kind of like, he would come in then after, and everyone would be like, obviously the mood would be through the roof because we've won, but Abel would kind of go, hey, no fine money for me. Do you know what I mean? And then he would just on his earrings in the middle of the change room and off he'd go. But there are certain fellas who will get, the rub of the green, the benefit of the doubt. It's just, if you're producing, lads are more than likely to leave it kind of brush off
So, the Damien Duff situation. This guy, Dan McDonald was on last night. I got a huge response from listeners, and we just detected a degree of frustration. I think frustration at the loss of iconic Irish player who's now a highly regarded coach, just the kind of figure you want around the team. There's frustration that it all seems to have been so avoidable, frustration that Stephen Kenny has had to talk about dark forces around the team, and probably a bit of frustration as well at the silence, that we know nothing from the FAI, nothing from Duff himself yet. It's kind of all down to journalists doing a bit of digging here and there. And you're just kind of scratching your head saying we're 3 months away from World Cup qualifiers, and frustration is the word. What's your reaction to it all?
Obviously, I'm disappointed. I don't know Damien too well. If I saw him, I'd say hello to him. I'm not close friends with him or anything like that. By all accounts, when I started my B licence, I believe he just completed his A licence, and all the tutors and whatever were raving about Damien's work, how phenomenal he'd grown as a coach. I know he did a lot of work with the Shamrock Rovers 15s or whatever. So obviously it's a huge disappointment for Irish football that he has, for whatever reason, decided to step away. The way I look at it is it almost feels to me as if something else has come up on the horizon, that if you look at it, he's obviously playing, or he's under Stephen, that maybe there's an opportunity now to go and be a number one, and he feels the time is ready for him. I can't imagine there's too much problems inside the FEI or anything like that. I just imagine he's going to go and look for that next step. Maybe he feels he's ready. There could be a lot of talk of Celtic. He made a huge impression there. Obviously working under Neil Lennon, they might look at getting him in, as the first team manager if it doesn't work out for Neil Lennon.
Right, okay. Well, then suddenly it makes total sense and there's no problem.
Yeah, that's the thing, Joe. I don't know. As you said, there's a lot of journalists doing digging. Everybody's been quiet about it. Look, I imagine if you were to ring enough people, or if I was to ring enough people, we could probably find out what was going on or what's wrong. But
yeah,
that's not really my place to do. I'm not a journalist.
No. Well, the ones who have reported on it, you know, Dan was on last night, David Snade, very reliable fellas, really good contacts, and it does seem that he was peeved and properly peeved about the investigation into the Wembley video, which I think we're all sick of talking about now and thought it was well behind us. But he was genuinely not happy about that, seems to be the reporting. He had a sit down with Gary Owens and gave it to him both barrels is also the reporting. And why there's been a time lag, I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe Stephen Kenny or whoever said, look, take Christmas, chill out, forget about it. It'll be a new year. We'll put it behind us. And maybe he thought about it over Christmas and thought, you know, sod them. I'm not over it. I'm sick of the way the whole thing was handled. Or maybe, you know, Stephen Kenny talking about people working against the team. Maybe Duff doesn't feel that situation has been rectified properly. And I'm getting deep into speculation here, which is tricky for you. But you know, if it's more that than him feeling there's a potential of a bigger job pretty soon around the corner. If it's more that ugly side of stuff, then it's like, ugh, you just, you know, you're kind of livid as an Irish fan looking on.
Yeah, of course. Look, like I said, Damien as a coach, look, we know how good of a player he was, but by all accounts, he's a fantastic coach. So you'd want him in around the team, and obviously, someone of his experience, you know, 100 caps, like he's the knowledge he has, everything. You'd want him in around the squad. I'd like to think that he's not what you're talking about, being annoyed and peed off by what's gone on. I hope to God it's not that kind of stuff, because surely that's resolvable by getting a few. Of course, look, you almost forget COVID's there. I was going to say, if you get a couple of people in the room, surely the issue could be solved. If you could get a few people on a Zoom call, there's no doubt this thing could be resolved. Because, as you said there, the timing of it is very strange. So in my mind, look, I don't know. I think there's a bigger picture for him. He's looking at a bigger picture that he's going to go into, you know, the manager's job somewhere. Maybe he has something lined up, or I don't know. Yeah. It's just the timing, as you said there. Yeah, of course. Look, maybe Stephen said to him, take Christmas, have a think over everything. I imagine Damien's a strong-minded person. I think once he's his mind made up, it's made up. So who knows? It could have come before, and he said, take Christmas to think about it. And then after it's come, he said, look, I've not changed my mind. This is what I feel. This is what I think. I imagine we'll find out in due course.
I'm sure we will, yeah. Based on your experience of being a player, if we move away from the specifics of what's happened here with Duff, because we're just going around in circles, obviously, but based on your experience, you know, you've been there, you've been in camp, and there's been generally Martin O'Neill, Roy Keane. At the moment, we've Stephen Kenny and Keith Andrews and Damien Duff. Like, is there enough work to go around there?
No, definitely. Like you, as much as you say, you know, you had Martin Roy, but you also had, you know, Steve Walford, Steve Guppy. Yeah. I know Seamus McDonald with the goalies, but like there is always 2-3 coaches.
And you do need that.
Oh, I do. I definitely think Damien would definitely bring something different than Keith, and Keith would bring something different than Damien. There's no doubting that. Even if, you know, Stephen was, you know, there's been names thrown around of Lee Carsley, John O'Shea to come in. John would bring something different, as with, you know, Lee Carsley. But there's definitely enough work to go around, you know, for all of them. So I wouldn't see that as an issue.
How important did you feel the coaches were in your playing career, Ireland and club? Obviously, whenever you're asked about your career, I suspect you're asked about the manager. Was that manager good? Was that manager good? It's probably rare someone goes, who was the best coach you worked under, you know?
Yeah. Well, do you know what, right? A lot of the times managers don't do the training. A lot of the time it is the coach. Like Marco Silva, I played under at Hull. Marco did everything himself. He had an assistant, Joe, who kind of, it was almost the teacher and the student, or the master and the apprentice. He would watch over everything Marco was doing, and he would just jot down little notes, and it was he used to give him little bits, but he was kind of like his eyes in the back of his head to see everything, but Marco had full control. Whereas like with Steve Bruce, we'd Mick Phelan, we'd Steve Agnew, and they took predominantly all the sessions. Of course, look, Steve Bruce had Steve Clements, Keith Burchin as well, so there was a few of them taking different parts. But a lot of the time, managers don't do the sessions. I'd say I've worked under Steve Bruce for probably 7-8 seasons. I'd say he's only taken about 30-40 sessions, but at the same time, he's still on the sideline watching over it all, monitoring it. and he's not too quick like to step in, go, hold on a minute, like this needs to liven up, or one of those, But a lot of the times the coaches, that's what they're there for.
Yeah.
Like if you imagine, even as we're talking about United and Burnley playing tonight, like you could imagine that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is not doing all the sessions. It'll probably be Michael Carrick and someone else who are, doing predominantly most of the work. It's only Ole will come in with his little, crossing the T's and dotting the I's, should I say, and add his little fine tune to it. But at the end of the day, he's the one picking the team. So that's where you kind of heavily rely on your backroom staff.
Yeah, and Solskjaer would have worked obviously under the Ferguson model, which was Ferguson again standing back, and it's Steve McLaren for a time, and it's Carlos Queiroz for a time. Like even Ferguson, that seemed to be his way of keeping things fresh. Yeah,
well, that was the best one I could give you was when we were promoted in the 2016 season, just after the Euros. Steve Bruce obviously decided to step away from Hull, but Mick Phelan had been his number 2 for the whole time. I don't know if you remember, but it was a big ongoing thing. Was he going to get the job? Was he not going to get the job? And Mick actually took us, and honestly, what we did in that 3-4 weeks was incredible. Mick stayed as an assistant manager. He didn't try and become a manager. The training sessions were the same. He did everything himself. It was almost as if Steve Bruce had gone on holidays and, Mick had just continued doing what we were doing. And that was great. Then Mick got the job, and it suddenly, changed. He brought in an assistant who started taking the train sessions. The train sessions weren't as good. I believe now, if I rack my brain, we played Leicester the opening game of the season, and they just won the Premier League. We beat them 2-0. Then we went away to Swansea. We beat them 2-1. Then we went away to Swansea. We beat Swansea 2-0. We lost to Manchester United. I remember Rashford scored in the last minute. And then we went away to Burnley and we drew 1-1, but we should have won the game. But we had started on fire. I think we had 7 points in 4 games. We were top of the Premier League. We were thinking like, oh, this is great. And then it was about a week after those performances, Mick got the job. And then he brought in Neil McDonald, his assistant, and then things started to change. But it wasn't Mick's touch and Mick's feel. You could feel that experience and growth he had as a number 2 to Sir Alex and what he'd learned over the years. But then when he kind of stepped into the manager's role, actually took it on, it fell by the wayside. And then I think we lost 8 in a row, and it just went sour. And then look, lo and behold, we ended up relegated.
See, that's fascinating, because then Mick Phelan falls into this category, fair or otherwise, of, well, he's a great number 2, but he's not quite a manager. And there's how many different number 2/managers have had that thrown at them. So, I mean, you would think if Phelan is in a place where he could be that good a number 2, that somehow he'd be able to keep the wheels on the road as manager. It's amazing, really, that there is that subtle difference.
Yeah, of course. And look, but I think when you're number 2, you just worry about the players and what's on the pitch. When you're the manager, you have to worry about the board, expectations and all that stuff, and you're dealing with outside noises rather than just what's going on in the training pitch on a Monday to Friday, preparing for the Saturday or Sunday, whichever day it is. I think that's when it becomes a problem. That then, can you deal with all the rest of it, plus deal with what's going on? And it is a bit harsh for me to say that it didn't work out for him as a manager. There's no, it's there, the facts are there. But there was no doubt he was an unbelievable coach. Sessions were fresh, our ideas were great. All the tactical work we did, we knew to a T what we were doing. But then comes the other stuff. Obviously, he brought in, like I said, Neil McDonald, and it wasn't the same.
Well, I guess that isn't that one of the things when a brilliant number 2, on the basis of their work as a brilliant number 2, becomes manager, they've lost their brilliant number 2 that the manager was relying on.
Yeah, of course, because you're looking for yourself, but you are yourself, so you can't help.
And it's not possible to do it all, is it not? It's too much.
Well, Marco Silva did it. Look, there'll be enough people watching this will say it didn't work out for him at Watford and Everton. And I remember when Marco was linked, Seamus rang me and said, "Oh, what's he like?" And we were blown away by Marco when he came in. All these fresh ideas and his hunger for it all. I thought he was brilliant. If he'd probably come a few months earlier, we would have probably stayed up. But at the same time, as you said, when a number 2 steps into number 1, it is very difficult, and it's very hard to do everything yourself because you have so much going on, to be dealing with owners, sponsorships, all this stuff. Like, the manager oversees it, and that was one of the beauties of Steve Bruce. He had, a great backroom team, but he could deal with all the rest of it.
And not get stressed out by it, not get overwhelmed by it, and just keep it all at bay, kind of a thing.
Yeah, he could deal with it. That was the big thing. And then, look, I know Newcastle lost tonight, but like, even so, there's been a lot of problems with, say, Mike Ashley, the owners. They want to sell the club. There's all this stuff. But me looking on from the outside, knowing him, he's certainly the one that would be able to deal with, Mike Ashley. I imagine they're mates, do you know what I mean, beforehand. But he'll be the one who'll be able to, deal with them, talk to him, and kind of say, look, we got this wrong, we're getting this right, we're doing that, because he has experience in it and he knows what he's doing. And look, if you speak to anyone who knows him or, has played under him or played with them, they all speak highly of him.
Yeah, I guess you got to manage upwards as much as manage the players as a part of it. You do get the impression from him he can do that. He gets that side of the game. Before you go, Anfield on Sunday. So, I mean, well, as things stand, United will go top, but it's 2 points drop. Now, they have, 54 minutes. So they have 35 minutes to get a goal here. So we'll have to see how that plays out. They're also playing each other in the FA Cup, obviously, a week apart. Kind of a strange thing to say, given that Champions League games are often two-legged affairs, but I always get the impression players don't particularly like having games against the same opposition back-to-back like that.
No, like, I think whoever you are, if you're intrigued to Manchester United or Liverpool, this is what it's all about. Look, of course, Liverpool will want to win the league. Manchester United will think they have a chance to win the league. And then, like, it's the biggest rivalry in English football. So, for them to be drawn in the 4th round, look, you'd want it in the later stages for the bigger occasion. But at the same time, look, the mindset of the United will change after tonight's result. Like you said, there's 35 minutes left. If they go top of the table, they'll be happy to play Liverpool and think, all right, we can take a draw. Liverpool need to beat us. Whereas if, finishes up as a draw, or if Burnley nick one, then it changes. So depending on that result, but then the FA Cup is obviously a straight knockout. So that'll be a different one. And you can imagine, I imagine that both teams would be the exact same for both games. I don't think, the manager would want to lose to their rivalry, the rival team. Of course, look, United fans, City and then Liverpool, Everton, but there's no doubting that Liverpool United's the bigger game. It's the one that all the fans will be looking forward to, and I can't wait for the both of them. I just hope Liverpool win them both.
Jurgen Klopp was saying there's a chance, and it's only a chance, that Matip might be back. He said he's very close. It'll be a couple of days either way if he makes it or doesn't. So, like, last time we saw Liverpool in a serious game, it was Fabinho, who's been sort of the mainstay at centre-back, and Henderson. You hate Henderson back there didn't feel good. What you lose in midfield from a tempo point of view and an authority point of view, I'm not sure that's worth it. That's robbing a lot from Paul to pay Peter, or whatever the phrase is.
Yeah, no, definitely. As much as Jordan's a fantastic midfielder, he's not a good centre half.
Okay, either. Yeah.
Like, if you're in possession and you're playing one of the weakened sides or the weaker sides, they'll drop right back. But against Manchester United, no. I would rather one of the young fellas play. And I said this with Gerard and the boys on Monday morning after one of the weekend games. I just said, you miss a lot from him in midfield, that high intensity, that pressure, that leadership, those qualities that he brings to the team. Just to kind of, you hear him. The beautiful thing now is that without the fans, we kind of hear, players more, and you hear him barking orders, instructions, getting fellas going. And that is missed. Yeah. And look, we're also at the point where Liverpool are in a very sticky patch. Of course, look, they ended up demolishing, Aston Villa's under 18s in the second half, but at the same time, the results in the league haven't been good enough. Mind you, it's only 3 games. The position they find themselves isn't that bad. And a lot of people are kind of focusing on Liverpool United, and it's almost, Manchester City are just in the background creeping. I think Guardiola will like that. Well, I feel they're still the team. I think City are still the team, because if you think about it, they had an abysmal start, and now they're slowly coming. and they've got games in hand. If they win them, they leapfrog right up the table. So,
well, they play tomorrow against Brighton, and then they play Crystal Palace on Sunday after the United Liverpool game. And clearly nobody's even given that a second thought. City Palace on Sunday evening, but they're 4 points behind Liverpool, 2 games in hand, so they can leapfrog Liverpool by Sunday night, and they're 4 points behind United before tonight, with 1 game in hand. So if United drop points, we could be, for all the United Liverpool talk, you could be on with the lads Monday morning and City will be top of the league suddenly.
And that's the thing is, Liverpool fans are obviously saying we'll beat United. United are saying 21 is coming, all that, and then City are just kind of going about their business. Like I said, they didn't start great, but they're slowly starting to put in performances. Kevin De Bruyne is starting to hit his peak performances again. So as you said, it is interesting, and they have favourable games in their hand where you're kind of looking at it. That should be a City win. That should be a City win. And then all of a sudden, they're top of the table. And of course, look, at the start of the year, I was asked, would I think Liverpool win the Premier League again? I said, I don't think they will. I think they'll finish second. I think City will win it. And I still think City are the team to beat. I think there's a lot more to come from them.
Okay. Well, listen, we'll know a lot more on Monday morning. David Meyler, always a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Cheers, Joe. Thank you.
David Meyler with us there. Still 0-0 at Turf Moor. Burnley 0, Manchester 0, 59 minutes on the clock. Let's check in on Molyneux. Alex Winters there.
It's Wolves 1, Everton 1, a most disjointed start to this second period, largely because of extended treatment to Pedro Neto. We went down under a challenge from Decore, who was rightly booked as Neto was sprinting towards the Everton goal, but nothing came of the resulting free kick, and nothing's really come of the football so far in this period. Wolves marginally with more possession, but doing little with it, and the sides sort of sounding each other out, really. And it's there for the take in this game, but it's Wolves 1, Everton 1.
Half an hour to go in both of those games. Daryl Horgan.